Hi, my name is Lily and I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder. It's a group of 13 different connective tissue disorders. The one that I have is called hypermobile type. But if you think of it kind of like if you're building a house and like I'm the house. If you're building a house and 50% of the bricks are not made properly and that they just crumble under the weight, and then a house builder goes and lays those bricks in any random fashion, the house is obviously not going to be very structurally sound. But depending on where the most bricks that are built wrong are in the house, it can affect different parts of your body. When I was a young kid, I was very small and skinny, and for whatever reason, I'd be going outside to play how I always did. My house backed up into the woods, so I was just always running around outside like a dummy. And I'd come back to my mom and be like, this hurts, that hurts, my ankle hurts, my wrist hurts. All these like random things would happen, and I didn't know how they happened or why they were happening, but I knew that it was uncomfortable, and it wasn't enough to go to the doctor, but it was enough for me to complain about it to my mom. I used to ride horses, and one summer I fell off a horse and I landed right on my back, and that's what kind of for me triggered the cascade of like neck and back pain. I went to the chiropractor and he diagnosed me with a limbus bone, and then I started to notice in track especially, I would have these bouts of extreme fatigue. Like I could not even do the mile warm-up. I would feel really, really dizzy, like from my heart beating so hard that it just couldn't keep up. And I ran every day. I ran 6 days a week in track. So I knew that it wasn't just because I was out of shape. I just couldn't keep up with everybody else. In my junior year of high school, I was in this kind of program called the Applications Research Lab, where I'd go on a bus and it was all career based. And I've known that I wanted to work in medicine for a long time, so I went and did the medical route where we just go around and learn about different body systems and all that. And in my research somehow came across this hypermobile spectrum disorder umbrella of conditions, but I stumbled across EDS and was looking up all the symptoms, and I just happened to tick like every single box. It started like this fire in me. I was like, I think that I have this, and I think it's what's been causing my issues for so many years, and I wanted to make sure that I really knew what I was talking about. So over the next year I started doing more research. I joined Facebook groups to learn more about EDS, and then I brought it up to my mom, and she was very, very hesitant to believe me, and she was just like, you're a hypochondriac, you don't have anything, so stop saying that you do. Aches and pains happen. And I started to develop this persona of, I'm not making this up, and I have a voice, and my voice will be louder than yours no matter what you tell me, even though you're my mom, because I know that I'm right and I know that this is normal. So I would come back to school after my internship and work with the athletic trainer, and that's where I would use all these skills that I gained in class my senior year to like wrap the football teams, like ankles and people's wrists and stuff like that for all of the sports after school. And then I started having hip pain. So she did the normal athletic training, like diagnostic stuff. It's not a real diagnosis, just to like see what's kind of going on. And I started getting grinding and pinching and catching in my hip when she was doing the tests. So she was like, well, you can let it sit there for a little bit. Like if I say if it's there for like more than 2 weeks, you need to go see somebody. And knowing me, having weird random pains all the time throughout my entire life. I was like, I'm gonna let it sit for like 4 weeks. And then I brought it up to my mom at the 2-week mark. She's like, okay, we'll let it sit for a little bit. And then I ended up not actually seeing a doctor for like 6 weeks since onset of pain. And that is when I finally went to the doctor, and we just saw a normal orthopedist. She diagnosed me with a labral tear, which is whatever, fine, simple surgery to fix. Sends me to another doctor who can do the surgery. And he looks at my x-rays and he was like, you have a labral tear, but you also have hip dysplasia, which is why you have a labral tear. After I found out I had hip dysplasia, I had to get surgery, had my first operation that took me, it's a year for full recovery, but I had complications because about 5 weeks after my first hip surgery in October of 2018, my scar started to reopen. So we had to go back in and do more surgery. And then I had my third surgery in December of 2019 to get my screws out and everything. You know, I'm going in for checkups on the reg, and he's like, wow, your range of motion came back really fast. I was like, yeah, I know, I'm hypermobile, but nobody believes me. So she brought it up to me without even me prompting her. Like, hey, you should get checked for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. And so I told my surgeon, hey, my physical therapist wanted me to ask you about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because she thinks it's kind of peculiar how hypermobile I am. And then him having the much wider network than any other doctor I've ever seen has referred me to the Ehlers-Danlos specialist. And I made an appointment there, waited 6 months for my appointment. As soon as I walk in the door, tell him all of my symptoms, and he was like, yep, you have EDS. And I was like, wow, this took 2-3 years to get a diagnosis, and that's so short for some people comparatively. Like, I know people that took them like 8 years to get a diagnosis of EDS because doctors will look at you and paint you off as a hypochondriac, or that you're faking it, or that you don't really know what you're talking about. And if it wasn't for me doing my research, I probably would have never gotten a diagnosis, because if I didn't tell the doctors, hey, I think I have this, they would have never even guessed. Because connective tissue disorders are so underdiagnosed, they don't, like, doctors just don't connect all the dots. Like, I had chronic fatigue and random joint pain and couldn't really exercise, like, cardiovascularly in any way. And when I stand up too fast or change my body position from like horizontal to vertical just in some manner too quickly, my blood vessels can't constrict properly to push the blood back up from my legs into my brain. And that's when you feel dizzy. If I'm standing for too long, the blood will pool at my feet. If I take a hot shower, the blood will pool at my feet and I can get dizzy. And how that affects my day-to-day life is I sleep with a million pillows so that when I'm sleeping on my side or on my back or whatever, I can support all of my joints so that they don't slip out of place while I'm sleeping. I use a cane sometimes when I'm having a bad pain flare day. It helps me walk because of my hip. It also kind of like helps me if I'm feeling dizzy from the POTS. I have something to like hold on to and press onto. Because my fingers are very bendy, obviously being a college student, I have to do a lot of writing. So I use an iPad with an Apple Pencil to write all of my notes, and that less friction on the glass allows me to be able to write. I would not be able to take the amount of notes that I do without it. So I have an accommodation for that. I have ring splints that I use on my fingers so that they don't go too far back, because that will start to ache. All of these things I have to like use to manage my pain and put things back where they're supposed to be so that they don't keep causing pain. I can do everything that anybody else can do. I just have to bring other things with me.